You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 240, Enfys, Nest, and the Cloud Riders. This is our final show of our solo A Star Wars Story coverage. And joining me tonight is none other than the man who can go no higher. Please welcome Jonesy. Jonesy, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, ready to swoop into action.
I see what you did there. Very clever, very clever.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, we're getting better at this. So we're recording this on July 3rd. So for those of you that are not, I guess, from the good old US of A, this is the day before 4th of July. So if you hear any ramblings or rumblings or explosions going on my microphone, it's because there is quite the arsenal that's going on outside in my front lawn. So
yeah, we've got quite a bit going on in our neighborhood as well.
Yeah, you got any plans for 4th of July tomorrow?
We're just planning on kind of doing the typical thing, going over to a friend's house. It's supposed to rain here, though, so we might not get to do all the fireworks stuff that we bought and the swimming and cooking out. But one thing I am excited to do, whether it's inside or outside, is some friends of ours bought me one of those Air Hog X-Wing. I don't know if it's call it a drone or not, but it's kind of one of the older ones, right? And they bought it for Christmas for me like a year and a half ago. And I have not used this thing at all. It's just sat there. And so we were going to go to their house. So I am intent. We're going to actually make this thing fly one way or the other and hopefully not break anything.
When I saw you post the picture of that in our Discord channel, but so you've never flown it? Do you know how to fly this thing, or are you going to crash this sucker in like 5 seconds?
So I am a big believer in reading the instructions on things.
I don't know what that means.
I know, right? So it's weird because it's only forward propelling. So you have to hold it in order to get it started and kind of give it a little gentle nudge. So yeah, I've read the instructions, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Good.
But no, never flown it before. It just never got around to it, I guess.
Yeah. And those are really neat. The one that stands out for me is that Millennium Falcon one. I see that all the time.
Oh yeah.
They've got a couple different versions. I think there's a smaller one. They've got a really large one now that I've seen like video footage of or whatever. And that one just
they have several of these out now, and they're really fairly reasonably priced now. So I don't know how well they work or how durable they are, but
you're about to find out. Or how flame resistant they are. You'll find that out tomorrow too.
Yeah, that's what I need to do. I need to put like a little camera on there, and we can shoot some fireworks, and it'll actually simulate a space battle. So.
All right. Well, let's get into the news. We've got a couple of things we want to talk about, and I think we'll probably just start with Solo Blu-ray release rumor. So this is not confirmed. We want to make that very clear. But by the looks of it, at least in Europe, I think is where this broke. It's looking like September 26th. So that may be a US the 25th release date for us here. And did you look at this? Is that a Tuesday? Because that's normally when that stuff.
Yeah, the 25th is a Tuesday for us. So that seems very, very plausible. And we kind of speculated end of summer. This is, I guess, technically still into the summer a little bit. At least here in Texas, it's summer until like October. So, but yeah, it's, kind of in that line. So,
three months is usually about the time they do that now too, right? The minute the movie comes, I guess maybe after it's peaked, sometime in 3 months ish, 90 days ish. After that is when we expected. Yeah,
we've seen these things really 2 months after it being in the theater for 2 months has become pretty commonplace. And so it's not, this seems really pretty plausible. So Ready Player One released today in theaters on July 3rd. Yep. Yeah, so that's exciting. And that movie came out in March.
Yeah,
March in the theaters. So March exactly 29th. 4 months. Yeah, so the timelines kind of work. They seem reasonable.
Yeah, they do. And September 25th, let's just make it known that is my birthday. So that would be amazing if that came out on my birthday. I'd be so happy.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to like the special features. I know I'm getting ahead of myself because this is all we've got is an unconfirmed rumor of one date, but I am looking forward to the special features and what they're going to pack into that thing. I hope they really do. I'm just have this morbid curiosity as to whether or not they'll even touch on all of the other stuff from, the previous writers, Lloyd and
Lord Miller.
Lord Miller, thank you. Yeah, I'm curious if they're going to, even have anything with them or talk about what it was like for Ron Howard to kind of come more than midway through that and take over the reins and the challenges and all that. That's the part that's super interesting to me. I think that's a story that I really want to, apart from the movie itself.
Yeah,
that's the behind the stuff I'd want to see.
If I had my tinfoil hat on, I'd probably say that will never be seen by the light of day.
No, you're probably right too.
I mean, I wish they had. I don't know. You don't want to throw these guys under the bus any more than they've already been thrown under the bus. But it would be interesting to see what those differences were for more historical documentation, if you will. Like if you want to look at it that way, rather than just piling on that this would have been, better or terrible or whatever it would have been. So just for, just curiosity of how that works. I'm with you there. It's kind of neat, but yeah, we'll never see that, unfortunately.
Yep.
Kind of like the original cut of the trilogy.
Right. Yeah. Well, I've got that on VHS. So if you ever want a copy, let me know.
All right.
I'll get you one of those. The other thing that we've got, I guess the other big thing we have is some Battlefront news. So it looks like we've got some DLC content that's coming very soon. Looks like they're kind of just hitting this thing from starting this month in July. And thanks to Utini, who's one of our loyal listeners and one of our big time Discord members. He kind of broke some of this stuff for us. But what do we got coming up in July 1st? I think this looks like it goes all the way through the end of the year, which is nuts. That's a lot of stuff coming out here.
Yeah, they released a plan. And actually, some of this was released today on July 3rd.
Today, yeah, right.
Right. So they're kind of working through some of the bugs. But yeah, they left the roadmap for the DLC, for the downloadable content, to show everyone what they're working on and what they can expect. So this was great news. It gave a little bit of energy to Battlefront 2, which is, of course, had a lot of frustration with it, I think, with the community. But you have a very core fan base, I think, that are still really enjoying it. But yeah, so some of the things that are out now is they've introduced the Hero Starfighters mode. So this is a PvP mode focused on the hero ships. And they've also introduced some of the game improvements that people have been asking for. So something simple like turning your lightsaber on and off is more of like an epic feeling, and being able to really feel invested in the characters with those abilities. But also they've changed some of the gameplay mechanics so that when you block, you lose stamina. So it kind of makes some of the abilities a little, or some of the more defensive characters not quite as strong and things like that. So it's kind of a balancing type of act. And it sounds like they've still got some work to do there. But actually, oddly enough, for this release, the one that I'm more interested in is being able to swap appearances like before the round. Because when you go to Endor coming from Hoth and you're Princess Leia, you don't want to use your Hoth outfit on Endor.
That's a fashion faux pas, right? You wouldn't want to do that.
Right. It's a fashion deal for the most part. But it's just kind of, it's simple and just necessary. So just for continuity's sake, I guess, for lack of a better word. But so those are the ones they did in July.
So going back to that lightsaber, being able to turn that on and off, is that just cosmetic, really, or is there some benefit from having it disabled where you're not emitting a light source in a darker area, kind of thing? Not
that I've been able to read. So my game has been updating, so I'm curious to get in there and try some of this out. But I think it was more for aesthetic type of purposes. It was a very requested feature as well.
Interesting. And then come August, we have something here that's very Jonesy-ish.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah, Clone Troopers coming.
Clone Troopers, exclamation point. Yeah. So this is what the community have been asking for a long time. So is basically skins. So ability, and what better way to do this than with Clone Troopers, Stormtroopers, what do you want to call them? And being able to, now they're not giving us a lot of detail about what that means, but again, this is one of those, like when you took away loot boxes and you took away some of that customization, now they said they were going to replace it and they wanted to just do it with skins, things that didn't impact gameplay. We just knew that with all of the variations of the colors and the squads and that they had in the movies.
So many. There's like limitless here.
Oh, it's a gold mine. I mean, if you look at all the Hasbro toys you got, I mean, they just went to the well 100 times and then they started painting X-Wings, different colors and everything else too, right? So this is something that people want. We're curious if this is eventually going to lead to some of the commanders showing up and giving us our, Commander Grease or Cody's or Rex's and things like that, maybe into the hero type of modes. And I don't know. There's one that Mike likes. I can never remember the guy's name. He's a huge fan of Commander Bakar, so the Galactic Marines. And then the Galactic Marines would be amazing as well as ARC Troopers. I mean, God, the list goes on and on, right?
Yeah.
So
one of them, one
of the interesting
improvements
ones
for emotes and victory poses. So they're making these for sale now.
Yeah, and they call this a game improvement, and I don't understand that. Like making something for sale, either credits or crystals, just for these the emotes you can do in the game, which kind of get annoying, and then the victory poses at the end of the match. I don't understand how it's a game improvement, but that's just me. And,
I mean, unless people are complaining that it's hard to get these, because right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the only way you could get those is if the card's dropped, right? And having money just to be able to go buy them outright kind of removes that hurdle. And
I think
maybe they're that sought after, but
I think some were achievement based as well.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So they were more unlockable, but yeah. So I mean, this is something. I mean, this is more customization, more flexibility. Being able to relate to the content. So it's great that they have it. My only beef with it is just the semantics of why are you calling this a game improvement? This doesn't affect gameplay.
Right. And then the fall, we finally get the big characters. Obi-Wan and Grievous are coming.
Right.
And then you've got large scale mode here.
Yeah, we don't know
what that was.
I'm assuming this is going to be one of like the Galactic Assault type scale. So we might get a new map or a new mode rather, but it's not clear what it is yet.
We got the squad system coming out as well. And then we've got Anakin, Dooku, Geonosis. And then we got more clone troopers. So it looks like you're all going to be stuff for you there.
The squad system has been a complaint of mine since the original Battlefront. And so it's a huge...
It sucks.
It's terrible, but yeah, it's nice to see. We'll see what they come up with now. That's due in the fall. Some of these are due again in the winter. We're finally going to get some more hero skins in the fall. So, but when I look at this, when I look at the total plan here, it just seems like it's a little bit at a time for the rest of this year, for the last 6 months. I mean, it's only 6 months of the year. I have to keep reminding myself of that. But, we've waited 7 months to get to this point. And granted, they had to retool their original plan, but it just seems like for 2018, we feel behind on the type of content that we may have that we received back with the DLC with Battlefront 1, the first one. Mm-hmm. So that's a little disappointing. I'm hoping this is an ability to get the fan base and the player base excited again, though, to where this shows them that it's worth investing. It's worth doing more with as we get into 2019. To where we can actually maybe get more content and feel like we catch up a little bit, or at least get on a good schedule, right? So get on a more routine schedule now that we've paved the way for the future here.
So are you happy with this content, or do you think, and I mean, I guess you kind of alluded to it a little bit here, but do you think this should have come out 6 months ago and we should be getting something bigger or more at this point?
I don't know if it should have come out 6 months ago, but some of the stuff, I mean, things like the squad system and some of these basic improvements, yeah, these are overdue. I mean, these seem like they could have been done, at any point. Now, granted, I get they were probably retooling the system, and that takes a lot of resources. So I get that. But yeah, overall, when you talk about what do you expect from a major title, yeah, I kind of expected to have some of this stuff sooner. Now, that when you look at just 6 months, that's a fair amount of stuff going into 6 months. So yeah, that's exciting to see that. And we'll see how well all that plays. I mean, then the problem with some of these things too is how well do you deliver? So are you able to do this without bugs or with limited bugs? And then are you able to respond quickly? So this is going to tell us a lot about this game. It's going to tell us more about EA and DICE, about what they're going to deliver and what their focus is on this game. They've taken a lot of criticism for, quote unquote, abandoning the game. And whether or not any of those things are true, there are people who believe it. So perception can be reality, right?
Yeah, and I'm also looking forward to whether or not this is going to bring back a number of players, myself included, because we played this game as a group when it first came out, and since then I really haven't played much. I think I played through December and maybe in January, but apart from that, I haven't really gone back to the game, and there's a number of reasons why. I think the only person that probably still is Jim, who probably is playing right now. He hasn't stopped. He's been playing nonstop, 24/7. So, but apart from him, I don't know that we've got a lot of people that are still heavily invested in the game. And it is going to be interesting to see whether or not this is going to be enough content one, just to satisfy people that want new content, but two, is it going to be able to bring back or drum up interest for those groups to get back together again? I think that squad system improvements are probably going to go a long way, though, because that is, and I said that earlier, but really constructively, that was kind of a burden. We would get all together, and next thing you know, we're about to jump in the game, and someone didn't make it in, and we got to get all the way back out. It was just kind of a time sink, and I appreciated the conversations that were going on while we were waiting, and we had a lot of good laughs. But after a while, that kind of gets a little old. So I guess we'll see how that all goes.
And the clone troopers are going to be a big part of that too. Of what skins are we going to get? So I hope they come. I hope they come at us with a broad range. Like, give us a bunch right now, even if that means we get a little, fewer as we go down the road, and give us some good ones that really get people excited. So give us the Galactic Marines, give us the 212, give us the 501st. I mean, give us some of these that we recognize from the movies that are exciting or unique that you have a hard time, that people want to play. I mean, you want people to come in there and play and say, I want to be that trooper. I want to do that. I want to play this map with that trooper, or I want to go fight and just whatever, and have a good time. And that's and we talked about it last time with the presentation. It kind of left us a little wanting, wasn't real exciting. This is their opportunity to go back there and say, look, this is what you want. You're getting it, go have lots of fun, get excited. We want you to be excited. Go play.
Yeah. Give me my Vanguard from the Old Republic.
Oh God.
I'm kidding. That would be cool, but no, I'm only joking. So, all right. Well, so let's get into talking about our main topic, Enfys and the Cloud Riders. And then right after that, we've got a little bit we want to kind of just wrap up this whole series of Solo, the number of, I don't know how many episodes we've done now since its release, but we kind of want to just give some final thoughts and see if anything's changed for us, going through the course of preparing for this little run that we've had here. So we'll kick it off with Enfys, and I think the first thing we wanted to really talk about was just kind of recap or retouch on the design, because this is really the most, she's easily one of the most recognizable characters, and even for a movie that didn't do as well as the other movies. We're not going to get into all that, but you see this character and it stands out. It's like a Vader, it's like a Darth Maul. It is just the look all together is very, and it's very different too. I don't know that we've had anything that really has looked like this before. Her look has been this way before, but what were your, I guess, not to say that anything's changed since you first saw her, but any thoughts around the look itself? Has it grown on you? Did you, because I don't even remember where you stood with it initially. I think you liked it, but has anything changed since your initial viewing or since they first showed a picture of her?
No, I've liked it pretty much since day one. It was interesting. And what I really liked about it was more of this tribal kind of feel you get from it. And as I've been able to get through some of the art books and the official guide, start to learn a bit more about what that design came from and the mismatch of all of the ideas that they had when they were developing this character. But it was, you're right, even for a tribal type character, it wasn't, for the first time, this was one that wasn't a primitive race that felt tribal. So we've had Ewoks, we've had Tuskens, those types of things. And we've not really had a civilized culture or a gang or whatever you want to call it that still had that vibe and had that feel to it. And so as I was working through the art book in particular has a lot of great content on the evolution of this character. And they really wanted to accentuate like Native American type of that kind of view.
Influence.
Right. Yeah. And actually, oddly enough, biker gangs of both the UK and the United States. And then an interesting one was around faith. And some of the tabards that she's wearing were inspired by Himalayan prayer flags, which is interesting because you had mentioned to me, I think maybe before the show, on her helmet, she's got an inscription. And it's just those types of things really add a lot to the character, even when you don't know it's there or once you kind of learn it's there and you learn what it says. And it really helps inform you as to what this character is all about and really what this gang is about, right? And so this mismatch of these and they really did that really, really well. And the design of this thing was just out of the park with how they did it. And what I found the most unique about it is that the entire movie, you didn't know that it was a woman under this outfit, and the way that maybe it was just some of the bulk and everything too, but it was very masking of it all. But that was really curious design choice. And worked so well to conceal, that surprise that we got later in the movie.
Yeah, and she's certainly again a standout character for me in terms of just the look across all of the movies really. And one of the more appealing things is it's not just that it's like primitive, type of look, but it's a mix of primitive and then you've got some technology in there as well, and that extends on through, right? That transcends to like the other characters as well, like Wiesel. And if you look at a lot of the other characters, they've got like they've got feathers on them. They've got bones, and so a lot of that we're probably going to get into it here, but it almost, and I don't think it is covered in the guide. I didn't see anywhere in there, and maybe it's covered in the art book, but it just kind of maybe it all beckons back to wherever these guys originated out in the Outer Rim. Maybe their home planets. Do they all kind of come from one another, or is this kind of one of those things that as a biker gang, so to speak, that they they got to figure out a way to incorporate some bone, and you got to figure out a way to incorporate some feathers just to kind of keep a look and feel to it. The Hindu stuff that you mentioned, there's some of those color palettes are very prominent here, right? You've got like the monkish oranges and almost like a Tibetan type feel as well. And I hadn't really noticed that until you just mentioned it. Going back to the helmet, that was one of the things when the character was announced and we had that first picture of her, we immediately kind of, and I say we being all of Star Wars fandom, jumped on the writing itself and immediately started to translate that in Arabic, but turns out that wasn't the language. So I want to just kind of go there real quick and ask you a question, because that was really, it was a poem, and the poem read, "Until we reach the last edge, the last opening, the last star, and can go no higher," is what's written on her helmet. Any thoughts around what that could that mean for her?
Well, it's a pretty powerful statement, and one that I think is echoed in a lot of cultures of just, pushing yourself, but also doing something greater than you are, believing in something greater than you are. And just, you can never give enough. You can never do enough. And I think when we see what their ultimate intentions are in the movie, that line makes a lot of sense. And what's really curious to learn is we know that the helmet has been passed down from Enfys's mother. So is this something that's generational, or is this just, was it created for her or something like that? Or is this something of a family, crest and a family type of saying, slogan, whatever you want to call it, poem, to where.
Yeah, no, I was going to just real quickly, I was going to add when I read that and I hear it, it almost it seems like that could be the motto of the rebellion, right?
Right.
It could be the motto for a lot of things, really. But that's immediately what I'm drawn to is, not giving up no matter what. It's kind of, again, persevering, kind of like what you were saying earlier, and not stopping. But it just felt like it was, again, and we've talked about this on one of the episodes, that her character and maybe to some extent the Cloud Riders are a prototype of what would assume eventually become the rebellion. And there's one other thing that I want to talk about too is the the shield gauntlets, because I think after viewing 4, I did notice it does look like, and keep me honest here, it does look like she does expand that out when she's on the train with Beckett, and Beckett fires a couple shots. It looks like she actually uses that to deflect,
right?
Which is it's just a really neat thing, because it looks like feathers, metallic feathers, I guess if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And it kind of expands, or kind of like a fan, an inverted fan. Yep. But again, it's another thing we've really never seen in Star Wars. I mean, the closest I can think to anyone even having anything like this would be like a Boba Fett or some kind of bounty hunter character,
or
but,
a droid.
It's really
droid's about the only thing. Yeah.
And then that coupled with her weapon, her choice of weapon, right? She's not using a blaster. She's using a staff, and even like her combat style, it seems like it's a very, I wouldn't say tribal or primitive, but it does feel like it is very martial artish in terms of the way, she jumps down, she's flipping around.
Right.
She's using that thing on the train. You can kind of just see the fighting style itself. So it's all very, very interesting, intriguing, I think. So I think they did a really, really good job with her character.
Yeah, and you see the blend of even samurai influences, right?
Yeah,
and some of the commentary that's come out of some of these books has been that, and this is the cool thing, right, about Star Wars, is that you always try to reference back to George Lucas. And so some of the things they say is like, well, what would George have thought about creatively when he puts these characters together, when you think about the design. And so it's really cool to still see those influences coming forward into the newer content with what his original premises were for the movies back in the 70s and 80s.
So I want to ask you a question here about the helmet, because one of the things is in preparation for the show that got me thinking about this, and I guess it's always been on the back of my mind, but why does she wear a helmet? Like, what is the reason there? And I don't know that it's covered in the guide or anything, but not only does she wear a helmet, but she's got a vocoder as well, right? And so she's using that to kind of mask her voice, and that could be just, a masculinity thing, right? She doesn't want people to know that she's a female for whatever reason. That could be a very simple explanation, but to wear a mask and everyone does recognize her. Usually if someone is wearing a mask, it's because they have an identity that they're trying to preserve. And this will probably just segue into our next topic, which is really kind of talking about what are her origins? And we're going to go into pure speculation here. So we're not going to really base this on anything or much of anything, but any thoughts around why she would wear a mask, why she would hide her voice, and what maybe her origins stem from?
Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas. I think one, a helmet or a mask or a headdress is very traditional for leadership. And so it makes sense to have this mantle that denotes leadership, and it's unique. Mm-hmm. And hers stands out above everybody else's, right? And so I think that's important. And that was definitely important, especially in Native American culture, the headdress in the tribe. But when I think about the utility of it, though, if you're going to go around stealing things and hitting and marauding and pirating, for lack of really better word, that's what they're doing. You have to conceal your identity, right? You also have these things go wrong type of things, and you need protection. And we see everyone in the gang is masked. I think that's true, right? I think everybody in the gang is masked to some extent.
They're masked to some extent, yeah.
Right. So it's just like, train robbers, right? Everyone wears a handkerchief around their face. Mm-hmm. And so it's just to that extent, that makes a lot of sense to, conceal your identity. And I think the voice is a big part of that as well. And I think you're right. I think she needs to project being a male because males tend to be the dominant figure, right or wrong. That's kind of the perception. And what's curious to me is, again, this origin of, is this a traditionally woman character who leads the tribe? And again, this is kind of a ragtag group in effect. They all come from different places. But is this something that's, traditionally run by women, or is this something that they've had to earn their keep in order to, or they've had to earn their place in it? Or is it some blend of the two? And
there's another aspect too. I mean, it could be an intimidation thing, right? In terms of why she has to, why she chooses to change her voice. We certainly see that. I mean, we get that from like Vader. We get that from Kylo Ren.
Absolutely.
We get it from the Stormtroopers too, right? I mean, without that, they sound cool with the helmet and the vocoder, but apart from that, it's, they're not nearly as intimidating when they're talking to you. I mean, I guess I would agree 100%. I don't know that I have anything, any other wild theories as to why she would wear the helmet. I mean, the only thing that maybe could possibly be an option or possibility would be, she's known somewhere else, or they know her face, or she's protecting, or maybe I think she mentions her mother, her mother's, I think, gone, but maybe she's got family or something, and people know, or she's recognizable. Maybe she's a royal figure or something, or, a public figure of some sort. And when she's out marauding and running around the Cloud Riders, she has to wear the helmet, because if, she doesn't have the helmet on, she runs into the whole Peter Parker thing where, she puts her family at risk or puts other people at risk.
Right. And we saw the young child with her at the end of the movie. And so we don't know if that's hers or if that's a relative or what. We don't know what that relationship was. So you're right.
Yeah. And she's pretty young. So that kind of leads us into the next topic here. So, I mean, it is interesting. It is intriguing to really think about why someone this young would be given so much power, have so much authority, be as, I guess, strong in terms of martial arts and, strategy and tactics and all that. Like where that's a very, and it's rhetorical more than, you don't have to answer this, but where does she get all this? Where did she learn all of this? And what environment or what background did she come from where she picked up those skills? And not only that, but is now leading this gang around, because some of these guys are, at least some of the, like Wiesel, we know is a lot older than her. We can probably estimate that Two Tubes is older. He's probably seen a lot of things, done a lot of things. And they follow her, and for good reasons. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's, can take care of herself. But it is interesting to see, or to really think about where that really came from, where that origin came from, and how she rose to power at such a young age like that.
Yeah, and if they've gone through the hardships individually, or as a family, or as a general tribe from wherever she came from, it's possible that these were core values. Everyone learned how to fight. We see that in a lot of cultures where everyone learns how to fight, and we definitely see that in that trend now, where everyone in the tribe learns how to fight. Everyone has equal partnership and these types of things. So it would be very, very real that she'd had to learn these skills as a young age. But then again, if her mother was killed at a very young age, she may have had to fend for herself. She may have been on her own to where she didn't have much choice, but in order to protect herself and to protect those that were remaining around her, or whatever that may have been. And so without much there, it's tough to say, but you can definitely see where these is, or where these questions lie, and where they could go. But the other part is, how does she inspire others to start, kind of coming into the gang to where, they want to follow this person? So, or, how long has she been in command? Who came in command before of her, and what continues to attract some of these, some of these outlier individuals, really, and really just individuals that join up, as time goes on.
And I would imagine it's a lot like whenever, freedom fighters are out there fighting their own battles, and, if there's oppression going on, maybe these guys are coming in and swooping in as, quote, marauders, but really in the midst of, liberating, other people, other tribes, other civilizations, whatever the case may be, she's probably running into these folks, and, like Wiesel or like Tubes or these other folks that are part of the Cloud Riders gang, and maybe they're just the standouts. They're the Enfys nest of their tribe, and after they've come in, helped them out, she's kind of picking these folks up one by one, putting together an all-star cast, so to speak, and using, their talents to kind of continue benefiting, their cause and all of that. There's another aspect too. There's the Cloud Riders, or I'm sorry, not the Cloud Riders, but Enfys Nest and her family. I think they mentioned that a lot of them had their tongues were removed.
Right.
And so that always stood out, because I thought, okay, well then how did she get away? Right? Was it a Jyn Erso where she went into hiding and she wasn't, a victim of that? But it sounds like, most of her tribe fell to that, or at least were victims of that. But it's another, I guess, intriguing aspect of why she wasn't, a part of that, how she got away, kind of thing.
Right. That definitely gives her the call to action, right? And so that gives you the motive. And that part of the movie was a little bit confusing to me, because it led you to believe that was her tribe on Savareen, but I also wasn't sure if that was her tribe on Savareen, or if it was just somebody else that Crimson Dawn had impacted. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if I just missed it, or it didn't really sink in with me, or what, but I left still a little confused on the very end there. So I'll have to, when it comes down to video, I'm gonna have to pay more attention to that and see exactly how that fits a little bit better.
Let's get into the gang a little bit, and we've kind of already touched on some of them, but they're kind of listed as these plunderers, right? And we are led to believe they're marauders, or they're the bad guys of the movie, and then come to find out, that obviously isn't the case. But it almost feels like they're kind of like this Robin Hood type gang, right? Where they're stealing from the rich, giving to the poor, that kind of thing. But you had a question there. Is this simply avoiding spoilers, or is the gang not always as altruistic? So what's your opinion of that, I guess?
That's a good question. I haven't asked it, but I mean, still. Yeah, it's an interesting one, because we don't really know what they're going to do with it. They say it's sparking something, but we don't know what they've done all the other times they've plundered. Are they using this to distribute to people who need it? Or, I mean, assuming they have to keep some for their own, benefit, they've got to be able to improve their weapons. They've got to improve their defenses. They've got to they need fuel to get around, because they don't just go around swoop bikes. They've actually got a ship that takes them from world to world, obviously, right? So you have needs in that regard too. But is it really just this, push outward to improve everything that you can, and they're just doing it in these very small pieces? And so I think when I saw this in the guide, it talks about plundering, cargo ships and settlements for riches, and very piratey kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And so I tended to believe that this was probably more trying to avoid spoilers in the guide and to keep a little of that mystery, which is a little amusing to me, in some regards. If you're buying an official guide, you probably are going to learn a lot. There are probably spoilers already, but at the same time, I think we definitely see on screen that their intentions tend to be good. We don't always know what they're doing with one certain thing at any given moment, but as time goes on, you can definitely see the trends that they would, if they would have been successful on Vandor, they didn't want to blow that up. They wanted to keep it. They wanted to do something else with it, right? So It wasn't that they were just out to, cause mass destruction or anything like that.
Yeah, and we get the sense that Crimson Dawn is their kind of primary nemesis in terms of, rival gang kind of thing. But you got to think that they're probably fighting a lot of different fronts, and they probably got their hands. I mean, Beckett is just one of them, right? He's not Crimson Dawn, yet he seems to be somebody that crosses paths with them quite a bit. And you would imagine that there's probably a number of other groups or individuals that are all kind of in, crossing paths with them at time to time, and they're spoiling their plans and vice versa. But would you go so far as to say that they're probably tied up with the Empire or being a thorn in the side of the Empire as well?
I think that they might, where it makes sense to, but they probably keep like that to a minimum.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're kind of poking a giant at that point. We don't know much about them, but
right.
It almost feels like that may be too much for them to take on.
Well, and clearly, if they have a connection with what Crimson Dawn did to what we spoke about earlier, then they are your number one target. They're, like you said, they're your nemesis, right? They're the ones that you want to hurt the most. But at the same time, there are countless other Crimson Dawns out there doing the same types of things. And the Empire, of course, is the most grotesque one because it has all the, the Imperial machine behind it. But you're right. You don't go and poke the bear at this point. You might do little hit and run things, but you don't want that attention on you, because if they put any kind of dedicated force on you, they're probably going to crush you. I mean, there's just no way around it.
Right. And we see it in Rebels. We see it obviously in this movie, and it really isn't until, Mon Mothma and those guys kind of rein everybody together and say, the sum of our parts is greater than our whole. Did I say that right? I have no idea what I just said.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying, right? Well, individually we can't do it, but if we all collectively come together, we can kind of take them on, and that's what's obviously sparked the whole rebellion.
Right. We all want the little guy to win, but let's be honest, more often than not, and this movie starts to show you a little bit of that, and Rogue One showed you a little bit of that too. The little guy usually doesn't win. I mean, it can be, it's a very oppressive environment, and it's that way for a reason, because they're very successful at putting everyone down, restricting things, eliminating where they need to eliminate. And so you've really got to be careful with that, especially if you're a group of 10 where, you're pinging this and that. You're not going to go do full scale war.
So if you had to pick a couple characters, I guess from the Cloud Riders that you'd want to maybe focus on, because we won't get into all of them here. There's some really interesting ones, and all of their looks are very unique. Some of these characters we've really never seen anything like it in Star Wars. Maybe in like, the Old Republic or some of the EU stuff, but canon-wise, no. This is all kind of new territory for them in bringing these guys in. But any particular characters that stand out for you, and why?
Well, I liked Wiesel, of course, because it's it's a fan favorite, and his headdress and everything is really cool. Though I mean, they made the visual aspect of this character really really fun, and really blends in with Enfys Nest in particular. So you can see it's the right hand man, and plus he has a rocket launcher. Yeah, and everybody needs work days to have a rocket launcher.
Absolutely.
So he's everybody's favorite, right? But some of the backstories on some of these is kind of cool too, where you see, Wiesel used to work with the Hutt gangs in Tatooine. Two Tubes, the Empire conquered his world, and was exploited by syndicates. And then we had some others that were bounty hunters, and it conflicted with their moral code at some point. And so that they change. So it's interesting to see just the dynamics of where some of these characters come from. And you start thinking through and asking the question, well, why would they join this group, right? So what takes them from that point to where you want to join a group of marauders? Not only how do you get synced up with that, I'm assuming that's more of an opportunity type of thing, but what makes you actually compelled to go and do this? And especially these lives that they were leading weren't exactly, ones of upstanding citizens.
And now, so I've got a question, and I don't know if this has been debunked or proven or whatever. But in the movie, he's just known as Tubes. And then I guess I just immediately assumed it was two Tubes from Rogue One. But has that been confirmed 100%?
I'm not sure.
Canon-wise, that is the same person?
I really don't know, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, and because I think his name in Rogue One was like Idrio or something, right? And they don't make any mention of that in this one. And it is weird that we refer to the one from Rogue One as two Tubes, and yet this one is just called Tubes. So it seems like if they were really wanted to draw the line there, that they would have done that. And I think we've probably covered this character either in the initial reaction or one of the very early shows that we've done since the movie came out, where we just kind of drew that conclusion and drew that line ourselves. And we may have been completely off base and wrong there, but in my mind, I would like it to be that same person.
And I think it is. And because these two groups, the Cloud Riders and Saw Gerrera's crew, at a very core level, they're trying to accomplish some of the same types of things. And what we learned about Tubes and Solo from the official guide is specifically that the Empire conquered his world. And so you could see where that could turn into, if we want to associate Saw Gerrera with fanaticism a bit and the extreme of trying to injure the Empire specifically, then you could see where that connection is readily available for this to be the same character in both movies and in both aspects of that timeline.
No, he's two Tubes in my mind as well.
Yep.
Any other characters there that we would want to highlight? I guess
those are the ones I thought were the most interesting that had a connection that kind of fed into the group as a whole. The others were interesting in their own areas, but it was more backstory of personal relationships with each other, less so than what drove them into this group. So I think we're good. So
let's get to the heist, and this is going to get into some tinfoil hats and conspiracy theories. But you had posed this question out there about going back to the Door Heist and how, even in Savareen.
We do that every time.
Every time. With Savareen, where this intel was coming. And I think the one that probably the most obvious answer would be there's a mole somewhere. But is that,
right?
Do you think there's any possibility that these guys have that they're that big, that the network goes out that far, they've got spies, people that deep?
I think there's always an opportunist. And when you have a group that has, let's be honest, Dryden Voss and them are throwing a party and people are for sale for the most part. So I think I'm with you. I think it was a mole. I think someone in that inner circle had to have known what was going on. And I'm curious. Well, yeah, I don't know how much like Kira and then sending her on this mission may have been to help root some of that out as well, to see how Enfys is getting some of this information. But that's kind of putting an extra tinfoil hat on top of the tinfoil hat. But
I got more tinfoil for you there, because what if it's Kira? What if she's the one? But no, that may not make sense just because of what she wants to accomplish at the end of the day. But yeah, clearly they're getting it from somewhere. And you're right. They don't seem, well, no, they do seem relatively organized. They obviously know how to fight with one another, like fight together as a unit. And they don't have to seemingly communicate a lot in order to accomplish that. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that they do have at least a small network of spies, especially if they continue to target Crimson Dawn and they have the ability to pay someone. So I think that's very, very plausible. So you've got Enfys Nest, you've got her gang, they're sticking it to Crimson Dawn. They're probably sticking it to the Empire, a couple other groups here and there. There's obviously a level of secrecy there. They've got their masks. They wear those the whole time. We've talked about that. And then yet at the very end of the movie, for whatever reason, she decides to remove her helmet.
Yeah.
And you can make the argument that this was really just a moment. It's kind of like the Kylo Ren thing, right? You can only go so far with the helmet on. And once it comes off, it's a very different dynamic of the character, a different character dynamic. And that is definitely true, because the minute she removes that mask, there's a whole level of humanity that just completely, swoops in on that in the movie itself. And especially with her, because she's a gorgeous woman, but it does beg the question is why, apart from like the plot element, I guess apart from the aesthetics or, being able to allow her to have that kind of human element to her, why do you think she would remove her helmet at that point? In thinking again from the character perspective only, why would she be driven to that? What is her motive? And suddenly removing her identity, especially to somebody like Tobias.
Yeah, that's the part that's hard to qualify. Is why would she do it to Beckett? Because they've been at odds and competing for what seems like a while now. But I imagine that this is how they've recruited others in the past, and they've had this opportunity and they've taken it. They're in the position of power, right? So if this breaks into a gunfight, they're probably going to be in pretty good shape. And what I don't know is has she seen something with Chewbacca, even as a Wookiee, and appealing to some of that, and maybe with Han for what she's seen cracks in the surface already. I don't know. I'm trying to remember the movie, see how much of that they've actually interacted and seen, which probably is next to nothing. So that might be a little bit of a stretch there. But I'm wondering if this is just the opportunity that they seize, and this is their chance, and they just take that chance. And if it doesn't work, all right, we get a firefight, and we're gonna, we'll see how that ends.
Yeah, it's almost a very disarming kind of move, right? Removing that off and
exactly
saying, look who I am type thing, appealing to emotions or heartstrings, as opposed to having the mask on and still being this uniform figure, this robotic figure looking kind of thing. So, but yeah, it is very interesting. I don't think I really have anything any more enlightening in terms of thoughts around why she would do that, other than, again, just I think maybe just trying to appeal to them in a different manner. The other thing too is, so that same moment there, right? There is a lot of credits that are transferred over. Do you think a lot of those credits are what would eventually become the rebellion? Or are we getting ahead of ourselves there? Like, where is she spending these millions of credits now that she's got from the coaxium?
So you have to explain that part to me. Where did the millions of credits actually get transferred?
Yeah, I don't know, right? I mean, they had all Han took his share at the very end of the movie, and then she left with all of the coaxium. It wasn't credit so much, but the value, or I guess more the net worth of that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because I assumed it was that she was going to take the coaxium, and that was, like we had spoken about before, literally fueling what might become the rebellion, or a piece of the rebellion. And I think that's kind of what I took from it, was more of the, this is more the value of this is exceptional, of course, but the being able to use it is maybe far exceeds the monetary value of it. And I think we saw that in the opening, I don't know what you call it, crawl, text, whatever, that fuel is what's in short supply. Fuel is what people are fighting over. Fuel is what people need. And so less so than the credits, they just need this in order to get around and survive. And we've seen that with the rebellion, right? We know that they were jumping around back in the original trilogy. They had to go and find new bases regularly because the Empire was starting to really take them seriously, and they had to hunt them down. And so you can see where large amounts of fuel are an absolute necessity, but very, very difficult to come by.
It almost gives you that kind of Mad Max feel to it, right? Where everybody's killing each other over gasoline kind of thing.
Yep, very much so.
All right, yeah, that's fair. And then I guess maybe one of the final questions that I kind of threw out there is whether or not you felt like her fate would be tied to Maul, right? Because we get to the very end of the movie, Maul is obviously out there. Kira is going to meet him on, I think, Dathomir. And he knows now that, and Maul knows that Enfys Nest is the one that's done all this, right? Or at least that's what Kira's told him. But you got to think that Maul's got to be pretty upset. And I can't imagine that Maul wouldn't be able to track her down or track down that gang. Do you think there's a story there or a scenario that plays out where eventually he does catch up with her and that becomes her fate? She falls at the hands of Maul? Or do you think she has something else that happens to her, that has nothing to do with Maul?
I think it depends on what path she goes now. So if she really is going to continue to attack Crimson Dawn specifically, then I think you might be right. I think there's something there where they will cross paths sooner rather than later. Now, if she is going to broaden the horizons and start to really facilitate a formal rebellion or a formal rebel alliance, if you will, then no, I don't think you might not cross paths sooner. Now, if he's making that his mission, that's totally different. But I think it depends on what her perspective is of what she needs, where she's going to go with this. If she needs to continue to hit them, then they're going to cross a lot sooner than if she just decides to, no, we're going to broaden our horizons. I'm going to start teaming up with other groups. And the pirating aspect of it, when we think of small time, is becoming a thing of the past for her and the group.
Yeah, and I guess I tend to think that, at least in my mind, it does play out with their paths crossing and, Darth Maul kind of getting his revenge on her, as well as the gang. I just don't know that they're going to be able to get away from him, right? Knowing what we know, apart from Kenobi, I don't know that anyone's ever been able to get away. He's going to track you down at some point, and maybe he's left that up to, Dryden up until now. And since Dryden's not there, Kira may not have the resources or the ability to do so. I just kind of have the scenario where eventually he's going to catch up with them. He is going to wipe them out, and it's probably going to be the end of the Cloud Riders. Yeah. Not to say that their freedom fighting doesn't live on, and it probably does. It resurfaces and it's going to come up time and time again. But that's kind of where I would put my money down on in terms of what happens to her, at least where her fate is aligned with.
I think ultimately you're right. I think it does end there at some point.
And like Kira too, like I can, what happens when Maul and Kira are together? I don't think she hesitates to kill her, even though you almost kind of get a feel, when her and Kira and Enfys are talking there, and she mentions that Han's going to do the right thing or help her. You don't really get a sense of contention there, but you don't really get a sense that there's a sisterhood of any way, right? So I would say that if Kira and Maul were to cross paths, or even Kira, maybe, who knows? I don't know. We kind of talked about where she's at right now, but in a weird place with only really trusting Han. But yeah, I can see a scenario where maybe she has a hand in that as well, and kind of bringing down the Cloud Riders or bringing down Enfys as well.
We've seen that in the movies too, where I'm going to give you a head start because I respect what you're doing, but I will throw you under the bus if from Kira's perspective. So she's giving them a head start, but Maul will get that from her, and he'll get what he needs in order to go and find them and take what's back from him, or take what's his, and kill them, or just kill them outright if he can't get it.
Well, I think that's really all we had, and I know it doesn't seem like it's a whole lot, but we really don't have a whole lot to work with here. So I think we did a pretty good job, at least covering some of the more.
Do you think we're going to see more of her in other aspects, like in the TV shows and all that?
Yes, I think we are. I think it's just too iconic of a character. I don't think they're going to do a Darth Maul kind of thing. I think they probably immediately regretted that, and that's why we've seen so much of Maul. But to me, she's right up there with him in terms of a look. I mean, and Maul's a different breed because he's a bad guy, and he's a Sith, and he's got a double-bladed lightsaber. There's a whole lot of other things that are appealing, right? He doesn't just have his look going on for him. And with Kira, we don't really have a whole lot of that. With Enfys, we don't really have a whole lot apart from her look. We've got a little bit of her origin. We got a little bit of her motive. But there's just so much there that's still to be explored and can be explored that I would expect that Lucasfilm would go back and pull, from that well as much as possible. Now, whether or not we see it, I think comic book is probably a no-brainer. In fact, that would probably be one of the media's formats I think I would like to see something more. And it's kind of weird because I don't really go to the comics first. I always think, I want a movie first, but then like, okay, no, that's a little ambitious. But I think with her, just because of the look, right, that whole tribal look and all that. Same thing with I'm gonna digress here, but with Phasma, right? I really wish they would take the Phasma novel, and I don't need it a movie, but I would like to see it either as an animated series or a comic book, because there's a lot of great imagery that comes out of that book. And going back to Enfys, I think if we got an origin story, or we got to see the homeworld, or we got to see how these gangs come together and all of that, I think there's a lot of imagery that kind of goes with it hand in hand that I think it would lend itself really well to, a comic book form. Right. And not to say that a movie wouldn't do the same thing, but realistically, I don't know that they're going to, it just seems too premature to say they'd go that far.
Exactly.
What about you? You think we're going to see her again anytime soon? Or,
I do.
If so, where?
I think comics is a safe bet. I think Forces of Destiny would be a good one too. I mean, very short form, just a few minutes show. I think I think that would work well.
Yeah. And that's safe too, because you don't really need to come up with a whole lot of content. You can play in that space and not worry about breaking, too much, or really, adding or subtracting from anything.
I mean, that's the thing. Really, it's for her and the Cloud Riders, it's all adding at this point.
So as far as, Solo and the movie itself, let's get some final thoughts here in terms of where we are. And I guess the first question is whether or not we felt like we got what we wanted from this movie. All things considered, now what are we? How many weeks since it's released now?
We were right around 6 weeks by the time this episode comes out.
Yeah, so 6 weeks, and there was obviously a big ramp up and all that. But do you feel like you got what you wanted from the movie, or anything changed since then?
Considering I didn't really know what I wanted when this thing was announced. I think it's...
Yeah, you made that pretty clear too.
Yeah.
Like, I never got a really good feel for where you were with this thing.
Yeah, it exceeded what I had hoped for. I think I'd hoped for not a disaster. And I think they delivered on that. I mean, we had a bit of a train wreck on the way to the ending here, or to the actual release, but I enjoyed it. It was not complex. It wasn't anything crazy off the rails, but it was enjoyable. And it captured, it gave us some things that we maybe didn't think we wanted to see, but we saw them and they were okay. They were good. And I had a lot of fun with this one. And I really like digging into each of the characters and thinking a little bit more about how they interact with one another. And so it kind of met my expectations. It exceeded them in some areas as well. And I think in general, I think the actors and the story and everything it was a benefit for Star Wars in general. What about you?
Yeah, I would agree. And the word I kept using was fun when we did our initial kind of reaction show. It's still a fun movie. Nothing's changed there. I think I've come to appreciate some of the characters that were, on the surface. Initially, I didn't really care much for, or didn't really put a whole lot of thought into it. But now I think back and, like L337, especially Kira, we talked about that. And I think the last episode or 2 episodes ago, there's some of these characters now have probably mean more to me than they did initially. And this is after 5 or 6 showings and a number of podcasts now that we've done. But I think overall, yeah, it's a great movie and it's a fun movie. I think the only unfortunate thing of all of this is really just that, that shadow of the fact that it didn't do, it wasn't a success financially. But you can make the argument that compared to any other movie, non-Star Wars related, it was a success, but because it didn't make as much as it was supposed to, or it should have, and maybe should have is not the right word, but as it didn't make as much money as it is expected to. I think it's unfortunate that we're not going to get the opportunity to see a lot of the other stories that could spin off from here, because really the Kazdans put a lot of stuff in there. They laid a lot of they did a lot of world building. They laid a lot of threads that can be taken in a lot of different ways with all these characters. And if you listen to any of these shows, the last 4 or 5 shows, we've kind of talked about possibilities and things maybe we'd like to see. But there's so much there that they laid down, and I guess I'm just worried that because it wasn't a financial success, that we're not going to get to see it. That it won't see the light of day, or we won't see it as much as we wanted. Maybe all that stuff gets relegated to just comic books, which I think would be unfortunate. There's an opportunity here for a lot of this stuff to be novels and cartoons and maybe even spin-off movies. So, that's kind of the shadow for me, I think, in all of this. But overall, I think it definitely contributed to Star Wars. I think it was, they gave us a lot of what we needed to see. And you can argue that it gave us some stuff that we probably didn't need to see, but we got it anyways, and it wasn't bad. It didn't really change a whole lot for me anyways. So
if you had a favorite moment or character from the movie, what would that be?
So it's still got to be the same thing. And it hasn't changed since my first viewing, the 5th viewing, or even now. I think it really was that moment when Chewie and Han were in the cockpit, and Han just kind of looks over at Chewie, and you kind of, I don't know, it was just kind of chilling. It was a really cool moment, and I wasn't expecting to. Actually, let me take that back. I was fully expecting to see that moment, but I don't think I expected that moment to impact me the way it did. It just was a standout moment for me, in seeing them in the cockpit together.
Right, and I think most people probably feel similarly that Chewbacca was really if you had to isolate one character in this movie that everybody loved and pretty much loved everything about, it was Chewbacca, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the way that he interacted with Han, pretty much everywhere, his character was perfect. Seeing him in the minds of Kessel and the decisions he had to make, both with Han and leaving Han and then going back to Han, it just they just hit it right on the head, and it was perfect for Chewbacca. And he was definitely the star of the show, I thought.
Yeah, and I think I think right before the movie came out, we did a show and we were kind of talking about things we'd want to see. And I think that was the very last thing I think I said was, I hope this is a Chewbacca movie. I hope we get more from Chewie in this movie. And we definitely got that. So I think it all kind of paid off for him. I mean, it's his movie as much as Solo's, right? As much as it is Han's. And I think it's okay, even though it is called Han. I think we do get a lot of Chewie, which is, they're all kind of one and the same, right? For me. When we've talked about sequels in terms of where it's going to go, anything there that anything new, or I guess any direction that you'd want to see that sequel go, or do you think it just sticks to the plot elements that were laid down here in this movie?
Well, I said early on, I really want like a Han Solo and the, kind of in the Indiana Jones. I really not moved off that marker. I like the smaller stories. I like the shorter timeline of the stories. I don't necessarily need to pick up right at the end. And I think that's where the Indiana Jones movies have done a really good job of, you can jump around the timeline and you still feel engaged with that character. And even no matter what timeline you're in, even if some of the faces change for whatever reason. So I don't need to see a direct sequel, but if you want Lando and some of those others in it, then you kind of have to go that route. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the story would look like, but I mean, Jabba seems like a pretty clear bet about what's next, right?
Yep. And I would agree. I can go with something completely different. I think I would be contradicting myself if I didn't say that, hey, they're not going to pick up on a lot of the stuff that was dropped in this movie. Yeah, similar to like The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. As much as I love The Last Jedi, there is a part of me that really wishes that they would have picked up on some of those threads that were laid in The Force Awakens, or done more with them, or taken them in a different direction. But I can go either way with it. It's fine as long as it's a good movie, and The Last Jedi was. Same thing here. I think if they picked up on all this stuff and just kind of kept it going, and it really did feel like a sequel, or the sister movie of this Han Solo movie, the first one, I'd be really happy with that. But if they completely change course and we get a time jump or whatever reason, or characters are no longer there and that kind of thing, or we have to kind of roll with it, as long as it's a good story, I think I would be okay with that as well. I just I'm in the camp of just give me more Star Wars stories, end of the day. So
yep, I'm with you.
Yeah. So speaking of more Star Wars stories, I guess before we kind of wrap all of this up, anything else that you'd want to see? We've now had Rogue One, we've had Solo, we've got rumors of Obi-Wan Kenobi, we've got rumors of Boba Fett, and obviously those rumors of the other stuff getting put on hold, or any future stuff getting put on hold. But and if you had druthers right now, what would you want to come out? What do you see coming out?
I think I'd like a bounty hunter movie. I think I'd like to see some of these bounty hunters that we've seen on the edges of the story get some of that limelight. We really liked them in the Clone Wars, right? With Cad Bane and Aurra Sing and Bosk and Boba. So it'd be really cool to get this kind of underworld type of story. I think we got some elements of that with Solo, and I thought that there was definitely some promise there that they could really explore. It would give us something new. It would give us something tangentially connected if you want to go that route. And it would be, fun and entertaining, I think. How about you?
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about a Kenobi movie. I'm still on the fence about that one. Maybe like some folks were about the Solo movie. We've just had so much Kenobi. I don't know that I need another Kenobi. Don't get me wrong. I like him and I love him. I'm not saying that. We've had so much of Kenobi that I don't know that that's really where I would go first if it were me. I think a bounty hunter movie, a Boba Fett movie is probably where I would go as well first. But I think if I was going to go really bold, I'd go back 500 years and do something with Yoda, because he's just been untouched, and we know that he's the sacred cow of Lucas for so long and continues to be. We just don't really have a whole lot there. But if you really want to shake things up, go that far back. You're probably not touching on anything that you're gonna, you're not gonna mess up anything in the Phantom Menace or any of that stuff. So you got a pretty clean slate there, and it would give you some interesting perspective on a character we really don't have a lot of information on. We know who he is 800 years later, and we know some of his quirks and that kind of thing. But it would be interesting to see a different Yoda, both physically, emotionally, mentally, that kind of thing, and give him a space to really kind of flourish, and maybe even kind of tie back. Maybe that they could. Well, of course they would do that. They would tie it back in some way to some of these other movies, right? But I think that would be a really bold choice that I would like to see. I think
that's a great word, bold. It would be very brave.
Yeah, that's for sure.
A very beloved character. A lot that I can hear the fan talk now. A very dangerous character to go back, and because you're right, if you don't get it right, you have a very strong chance of upsetting the fan base pretty considerably. So I think that, and again, I just think this is the time to, can we try to break away, or will they be brave enough to try to break away now from the core stories, the core characters that we know and love? I'm with you. I'd love to see Yoda in a more immature state, or in more of a growth state,
Right.
than what we see him now. But I just don't know if we're in the right place for that kind of movie right now.
Yeah, we need some big blockbusters, I think, before we get there.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, you have to have that confidence to be brave again, and I think we're lacking a little confidence right now.
Yep. All right. Well, let's talk about. We'll kind of end the show here. Next week we are going to take a break, so we won't be back until the 24th. Is that right? That's when the next show.
That's when it'll drop. So yeah, we'll have a week off there.
So we're going to take a week off. We've got vacation stuff coming up, family stuff, that kind of thing. But we'll have our next show out on the 24th. But in between then, if you are a Patreon subscriber, and I think at the $2 tier, and you get the Cantina After Dark episodes, Mike and I are going to be recording one while Jonesy's playing and having fun. We're going to be sitting here podcasting and talking about porgs and the basement and who knows what. But we've got that coming up, so you'll get to see that. So don't worry, you'll get at least some kind of Cantina Cast content here during that time as well. And then when we get back, I think what we're going to do is try to do a listener question feedback type show. So we've done a couple of these. They've been a lot of fun. We've had some great questions that have come back from the listeners, and so we're expecting you guys to pull through for us once again and provide some of that for us as well. So before we go, any final thoughts from you, Jonesy?
Nope. We, like I teased in Discord, Solo is now part of CC level canon, so Cantina Cast level canon. It's welcome to the club, Solo.
Yep. Welcome to the club. All right. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram at The Cantina Cast. We're on Twitter at The Cantina Cast, Facebook /The Cantina Cast. If you'd like to shoot us an email, you can do so at cantinacastfanmail@gmail.com. We're also on iTunes, where we've got a Discord server up. We've got Patreon. We've got a TeePublic. All those links will be in the show notes. So please support us in any way that you can, or any way that you'd like to. And so with that, happy 4th of July, and we will see you guys in just a few weeks here.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff. But I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what. So that's your disclaimer.